Okay, this is not the ideal presentation mode, but it's what my computer is doing right now. I'm Eli Ochiltree of the SnoKing Beekeepers Association, and this is our monthly third Wednesday meeting. Today is March 18th. Our guest speaker will be here more like 7 o'clock or a little later. He said he'd come as soon as he could. And he's a very interesting person because he's been beekeeping, I know, longer than me. So I know 14, 15 years at least. He actually says in his bio, I think he said that he started in 2014 or something, and he took classes and figured out a lot of it on his own. And he's really going to be fun to listen to. In the meantime, you are stuck with me and announcements. There have been some WASBA curriculum changes. I'll try to write it up and put it in a newsletter, but that's one of the most important things I wanted to mention is there are some changes. Before, when you took the beginner class and got the certificate, your WASBA membership dues were paid for the year. I don't think that's true anymore. The apprentice certificate, a lot of people didn't worry about taking it after they finished their first season of beekeeping. I'm going to start emailing people and recommend that you do it as soon as you can, because there's been a change in interpretation of the current rules. Now, the day you receive your certificate, not the day you start the apprentice course, but the day you receive your certificate, is the absolutely required starting point for journeyman requirements. And you can't do most of actually you can't do anything until you have that certificate in your hand. And I think, where did I put the rest of that? Did I put that down here? Oh, my slides are out of order. Okay. I'll just have to explain that. Here it is. This is my better slide. The board is going to have a meeting on Monday that's open to the public, and I hope to learn a little more there. And I put that link in the chat. And also put it on the Facebook discussion group page, just in case anyone's interested. The big changes are to the WASBA curriculum, though, with the new board that came in October. So beginner no longer includes your WASBA membership dues, but that wasn't really important to most people. But the apprentice certificate date is now your starting date for journeyman. And the reciprocal WASBA master is no longer accepted as an alternative to a journeyman certification if you want to teach classes without being under the supervision of another journeyman. And if you go to wasba.org, to the website, and you read the requirements for journeyman, you always needed 3 years beekeeping experience. The recent interpretation by the education chair is that 3 years, 1,095 days, or if there's a leap year in there, 1,096 days, starts with your apprentice certificate date. That is catching some people off guard because they always thought, I'll do journeyman someday, and I'll take apprentice right before I take journeyman. Well, now it's going to be important that you take the apprentice. If you ever think you would ever want to get journeyman, you take it as soon as you possibly can, because the 3 years starts to the day from when you get the date of that certificate. And the same for your hive journal, which is 2 years. And this may sound really pedantic, but for people who've kept bees forever, it's something that a lot of us never thought about, that it had to be to the day. So check with me if you're running into any problems on this, and we'll figure something out. Let's see, what else did I want to bring up? Oh, most important thing, and I think, is Jen on here? I think Jen is on here already.
Yes, I'm here.
There you are. Okay, Jen is she and her husband are the wonderful people hosting the brunch social this Saturday, and she really needs you to RSVP though, and I didn't put it here. It's in the newsletter. Jen,
no worries.
Do you want to
put my email in the chat?
Thank you. You put whichever way you want, text or email. Email's probably better because then you can send the address, because we don't send the address until you RSVP. It is in the Bothell Kenmore area. You may already know where Jen lives, but you know, for security's sake, we don't mention it till then. Okay, the WASBA board meeting is on the 23rd, which is Monday. I put the link for that in the chat. It's open to all the members of WASBA. You don't have a right to speak or anything, but you can listen. And they only have 3 or 4 of those in a year, usually. The Hive Mind, Jen again, is going to be hosting the Hive Mind. Did you realize it's a week from today?
Yes, next Wednesday.
You and Randy and Kobe's been helping out too. Kobe
Yes.
Sensler, who is doing the she's doing some not for certificate courses, but in-person courses through Everett Community College's sort of continuing education, community education type courses. So that's a chance to actually see a live beekeeper. I mean, we all live with Zoom, but a live beekeeper sometimes really nice. Then we keep on doing things. There's like one a week, which is sort of on purpose. It's not accidental. The Trophs are going to be meeting April Fool's Day, first Wednesdays. And we need a topic. Beginner. The next beginner is timed for those people who put it off until now, but it's going to start March 31st, once a week for 7 weeks. Brandy is wonderful. She's teaching it again. And that's sort of timed that if you're getting your equipment, getting it painted, getting your bees, that should all be happening very shortly after March 31st. So for some people, it's a good time. Oh, and if you want a review and you want to come to that, great. The Hive Mind, you can ask all the questions you want. Nobody laughs, trust me. Right? You take all questions, right, Jen?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
We always have a couple different answers.
See, it's even better than multiple guess. You get multiple choice. You can actually pick anyone. No, really, there really is usually a consensus on what the correct answers are. Okay, so we're doing a lot of stuff. I keep putting those in the newsletter, but I don't know. Oh, the pollen trapping. I just put something on the Facebook discussion group. I'm kind of excited because this is easy to do. And this is the email, basically the text of the email that came. And it looks really easy to do. And it explains how to do it. And I put that video link. I think that one that ends in GB7E. I think that's the one I got into the chat. I hope. I think so. Okay. And it's just a very short video that explains. And then they are going to have question and answer sessions on March 27th. You may not have signed up for this, but if you're still interested in the project, note this line most of the way down. Even if you are not a beekeeper, but are interested in the project, you can still support us through hand collection. I think usually when they do that, they need like a gram, which is a lot of pollen, but you might have a whole bush of something and you might be able to collect. So it's worth checking out. I think it's really great that we can help with this citizen science type stuff. Just even watch it happen and say, this is not the right year, but next year we're going to do it. So here at the Maltby Apiary, we're planning on doing it. We have a plastic trap, which is a lot like this one. This one looks like you might have to push pin it in to get it on. And you're only going to leave it on. Well, you can leave it on, but you're only going to force the bees to go through the little holes and knock their pollen pellets down into this tray down here at the bottom, which is what you actually empty. You're only going to do that for 48 hours out of a month or something. I think that is. Okay, I will read the directions before we do this at the Maltby Apiary. I promise. And you should too. And watch the video. But this is really kind of fun. The other thing about pollen trapping that's really neat to mention is even if you've been keeping bees a while, you might never have trapped pollen. I mean, the bees need it, don't they? Yes. But when we hit the July dearth, those of us who've kept bees a few years, we've watched our bees start filling up the honey frames with pollen because there's a nectar shortage. We can feed them some syrup to get them through that nectar shortage, maybe because we want them to still be raising brood in late July, early August, to keep them kind of going because the summer is not over. Okay, But we can also use the pollen traps at that time because they're collecting more pollen than they actually need. And they're collecting it because they're little hoarders and they can't stop hoarding. They just cannot resist. Okay. So I think this is worth looking into, even if you aren't planning to be part of the study, you're not planning to do it this year. This is one of the easiest kind of fun things you can do. And then a lot of your friends want it. You can smash it up and put it back in your, when you make pollen patties. Some people actually feed their pollen dry. That's a whole nother, I don't think I would try doing that, but some people do. Just put it where the bees can get to it dry and let them kind of pick it up and dust in it. And then they have to clean themselves off. So they take the pollen on them back to the hive. I did that. Oh, we were going to do one more pollen patty and fondant making session, but you kind of have to have a large kitchen, you know, and I know that's a big ask. Nancy Best did it back, was that this January? It was wonderful of her. Let's see, anything else? Oh, the master certificate through Cornell is still available. And if you do it, I guess I got a link here on how to get started on it. Oh, it must be at the flyer that explains it. But the important thing is, don't forget to ask for the 1/3 off discount. If you do this, you need to knock it down from the $899, $900 down to $600. And I've forgotten what the passcode is, but I will send it to you if you ask me. Okay. And Mike's not here yet, right? I hope I haven't. Just want to make sure that Mike will interrupt me, I hope, if he gets here before I stop talking. Even my husband doesn't wait for me to stop talking. Okay. Evergreen State Fair, since I have your attention, I know it's a long time in advance, and it's something like Barn in the USA or Barns in the USA. It is our biggest social event of the year, and we try to get 3 people at the booth at all shifts, and I think we pretty well succeeded last year for all 11 days. Then we like to have giveaways, and if Mike with a Y, Mike Gebhardy is on here, he just delivered some more burlap sacks, which we can roll up tightly and give everybody who comes a free sack. Hey, people stop at your booth when you have a freebie, right? And everybody needs a burlap sack. That, if nothing else, everybody's talking about it's the greatest smoker fuel, right? And then we're going to make a thing called weatherworms, and I forgot to put the picture up. Marie Houston put it up, I think, at the last, I don't know if you could find that in the chat, the last meeting. She put up a picture. It's a cute little piece of yarn with a little saying on it that says, I am your weatherworm. And if I'm wet, it's raining. If I'm white, it's snowing. If I'm stiff, it's freezing. It's the dumb kindergarten thing your kids bring home and you ooh and all over, okay? So I expect people to ooh and all over this. But it's a free giveaway, and it has, of course, our little SnoKing Beekeepers logo, We Talk Bees, attached. These are coming in the mail. If you saw, not 2023, but the 2026 are coming in the mail. So if you signed up in the past, I can't believe they're finally, I think, mailing this out. I believe I got it in the mail. And your ID number, your first year, is given to you. Don't worry too much about the other stuff, the UBI number, unless you want to be an official business. That's universal business ID number. I know we have one. SnoKing has one. Businesses have one. And you fill out that form so that you are protected by the wonderful RCW, which limits liability for acts or omissions related to beekeeping. This is the one we drill into you, beginner, apprentice, and journeyman. We talk about this. If you are guilty of gross negligence or willful misconduct, it won't help you. But if it's a standard thing where your neighbor says, I got stung by your bee and I'm mad about it and I'm going to sue you over it, and you didn't do anything wrong, you followed all the good beekeeping regulations and good management practices that you are aware of, then you are not guilty of gross negligence or willful misconduct. but you got to register your apiary with the WSDA using that form to qualify. I'm almost to the end of the slides, and then we can just talk, and people can tell me what they're doing. Plants, I did want to mention, some people are really new to beekeeping. I did not know what a big leaf maple flower looked like until I kept bees. That's the first big nectar flow in this area. Okay, that is it's a composite, obviously. Well, it's a whole mess of little flowers together, and that is a maple flower. And actually, these flowers come out first before the leaves. The first green you see on those huge big leaf maple trees is that nectar and pollen, but especially the first big nectar source. And one of those trees has a lot of nectar. If you have one near your apiary, and I think one big leaf maple could feed an entire apiary for, I don't know, however many weeks it blooms. So I wanted to make sure everybody knew the big leaf maple does bloom. We're kind of past, this is ornamental filbert. This is a close-up of the filbert catkins, what they look like. The bees do love the pollen on those. The willows, they get some nectar and a lot of pollen. Here's willows. Willows are not weeping willows. If you're unsure about that, they're the scruffy looking, bushy, not really trees. Every place where the ground is wet part of the year. I need a good picture of scruffy looking willows, not the beautiful ornate weeping willow that people plant in their gardens. Okay. Wait a minute. Okay, one more down. And then before Mike started talking, when Mike Kossian comes on, which will be pretty soon now, I just wanted to quickly say there are different types of honey for anybody who's new. And if you can't remember the terms, this is called creamed honey. This is chunks of honey still in the comb and with some extracted honey poured around it. This is one of the ways you get comb honey, we call it, still in the comb, highly prized throughout a lot of the world and prized in gourmet restaurants. And this is when you get a lot of it and you cut it out with a nice even cookie cutter so that you can get the same size pieces for pricing. People will price it so much the ounce. And comb honey, I really hope Mike's going to talk about this because I was asking him, can he do it? He said, yes, he's had some success. Comb honey, you can cut it that way, or you can get the bees to put it inside of little boxes for you. This kind of little box, and then all those little boxes fit in a little, that's a honey super, and it sits on top of the hive. And you want the bees to draw it, the nice, newest, finest wax there, and draw it all out inside these little squares, or there's a round type called a Ross round. And they fill it out, cap it over, and then you just can sell that as is. It fits into another little case or box. I think up here, these are, I think the clam shells. They call them clam shells in the produce department of the grocery stores. You can buy these kits. There's what they cut those. That one set I was showing you, they cookie cuttered it out. That's the big, huge cookie cutter. This is difficult to do. It's not a first year thing, but it really is beautiful. And when you do it, you may have already noticed that sometimes your honey is capped differently. So while we're here, the dry capping is considered to look really nice, but the wet capping is normal too. And the bees will sometimes do both of them in the same hive, even on the same frame. And I just thought I'd show you that before Mike got talking. And that's really all I have to say. So I'll stop the share. I think people got enough links and we can talk to each other because I don't see Mike on yet. He works a full-time job. Okay, I talked a lot. We still probably have about 15 minutes before Mike can make it here. Anybody want to volunteer do you have any questions about what I said? I threw the announcements at you, but some of it sounds interesting. The webinar tomorrow night for the VFD is going to be on European foul brood. So Mike will be here any minute. We've got, let's see, who's the farthest away person? I'm trying to think who's the farthest away person. Darius is pretty close to me. Oh, James. James, I finally got your certificate in the mail to you. Did you get it?
I,
Congratulations.
I have not gotten it yet.
Okay, I just mailed it. Which day? Monday morning? Well, Tuesday morning.
Okay.
I
Sounds
think,
good.
okay, yeah, this is Wednesday night. Sorry. Congratulations to James. He finished the journeyman. Oh, and James does lay-ins hives too. If there's anybody who's kind of curious about lay-ins hives, I don't know if you ever have time because you're going to school full time. And you're doing the Cornell program. When are you starting Cornell?
That's not until I think May.
Okay. And it's about 15 months to complete. And I like the Cornell Master Program a lot. So I kind of pitch for it. Okay. Marie, were you going to say where you are from? Okay. The volume's not coming through. Okay, I'm going to ask you to unmute, okay? Okay. Is your volume down? Is that Marie that I was trying to talk into? We should all watch the next movie together because we had fun at doing the monk and the bee. I can't hear you, Marie, so you might have to put it in the chat. Let me see. Is there anything in the chat that I missed? Oh, yes, that's what Marie put. She put, they changed the view day for the Secrets of the Bees. It was a National Geographics with a very famous guy, Cameron something. Oh, here, if you click on that, you'll be able to read it on the graphic that she has there. They changed it to the April Fool's Day, to the 1st of April. I think it'd be fun to kind of watch that together. If somebody could stream it and then we could all join on Zoom, think we could do that? Oh no, is the laurel's not blooming yet, right? The huge, invasive, gorgeous hedge. Anybody can grow it, even if you have a purple thumb. Okay, what else did I miss in here? Okay, Marie's going to try signing off and coming back on. Sometimes that works. And then she can get through. Oh, there's Jen's number if you want to RSVP for Saturday, 9:30, Bothell Kenmore area. You get the exact address when you RSVP. And I need to find the link to that veterinary feed directives and honeybee disease. Okay, for those who have signed on, we're waiting for Mike, our speaker, to come on, Mike Kossian. And he works full-time in addition to running about 100 hives. So he knew he'd have to run a little late, but he's so interesting to talk to. He's worth waiting a little bit for. Okay, so the laurel is budding up. A lot of things are budding up. And that's why at the beginning, I wanted to make sure everybody watched for the big leaf maple, which I did not know that was flowers that came out before the leaves. I mean, I haven't climbed a tree since I was a little kid. And Japanese maples were actually all the maples, the bees actually get pollen and nectar from all of the maples. We have a lot of little fine leafed ones and the viney maple that goes red in the fall. Our maple that really does turn nice fall color. Okay, Gail's from way up at the new bee club up in Linden, working with growing veterans. So hi, Gail. And Karen is Lake Stevens, right? That's that Karen. Steve is Bothell, I think inside the city limits in Bothell. Yeah, North Cascade Beekeepers, and they have a website and they don't charge any dues and they have in-person classes. I put them in the newsletter because I know that's a big draw and I wish like anything that I could do in-person classes, but it's just awfully hard down here. yeah, we just don't have a good in. The NWDBA definitely has a definitely has an advantage over that. That's the one that meets at First Lutheran in Snohomish. So who else? Anybody else want to say hi? Debbie, I remember you from the apiary. Debbie came out a couple of extra times. And often in the middle of the week, it's nice to have somebody there helping out. It was really nice. And Darius did a bunch of helping, a lot last year, especially the Queen Workshop. And then, and it's he and his wife Inga came out a lot. Dave this is your second year, right? And yeah, and Jen wants to help with the veterans. Yeah. Yeah, Steve's a veteran too. Have you thought about how many bees hives do you have this year, Steve? Because yeah, you could kind of mentor. That's Stephen Howard. And then Stephen Scott, I never asked you if you were. I don't think so. I can't keep track of who's a veteran, who isn't. But that's okay. If you need reimbursements or something, let me know. The program ends September 30th. Brandon, I don't even recognize your name at all,
Hello.
but you're welcome. Oh, Marie, you made it. Marie made
Yes,
it
I
to
did.
audio.
I figured it out.
Audio.
So yes, I'd be really interested in hearing from the Lions guy you mentioned earlier because I will be starting with that this year.
James, okay, this is James here. Maybe you guys can trade.
That would be awesome.
Even though James, I know James is in full-time school and yeah, a lot of stuff.
Whatever advice would be amazing. But yeah, if we want to get together to do that thing, they changed it to the 1st. So I don't, since you have that meeting on the same day, I wasn't too sure what you were thinking. Or if we could do it another day too, so whatever's easy.
Is it recorded or is it live streaming or how does that work?
I think it's just available at that time. I'm not sure.
Okay. There's nothing. We don't have anything the second Wednesday of the month. I think the 8th is free. Or I could ask the tropes if I can move them, but I'm kind of trying to get people used to being in a certain slot and showing up.
Okay, I just stopped driving. I'll put my email in the chat. So Marie or whoever, if anyone
Okay.
has questions about
Lands.
we can chat in the future.
And you
Yeah,
even
that
did,
would be great. Thank you.
yeah, and James even did a Lands nuke because what if you want to separate some out or move them or offer them to somebody else?
They're combo swarm boxes and nuke boxes. Essentially.
Yeah, if you want to make a split, it's kind of neat. There are other people that have lands too. Pierce County Beekeepers had some people that were doing it, and somebody way up north, maybe sometime Gail will run across there was a gal way up north who made her own, and everybody has to make their own. Pretty much you have to be handy with tools or know somebody who is, because they're not highly available.
Well,
Although
there's through Dr. Leo, you can technically buy some that are pre-made, but yeah, I mean the ones that I have, I made. He has free plans on how to make them, and he even does it in a way that shows basically how to save the most amount of money. I think it's like 4 big sheets of plywood and then 3 2x4s makes and then a bunch of wool for insulation makes
yeah.
3 full hives. So
Yeah, we just got done with that and now we're in the painting phase, but I think it's the 3 sheets of plywood for the hive bodies themselves and then 1 or 2 extra if you want to do the peaked roofs or not.
Right.
And I like wool blankets. Wool is, if I assume most people, well, maybe not. Nowadays, not everybody may know that wool retains heat even when it gets wet. So it's an oddity because, and in this climate, you'd think it would be really important, but we've gone to a lot of synthetics that are water resistant, if not actually waterproof, and they breathe somewhat. But wool used to be the perfect type of fabric for this area because it could get wet, breathe, and still be warm.
Yeah, that's one of the nice things. I mean, I don't know how much breathing there is between two sheets of plywood, but that is one of the nice advantages with having the wool insulation between those is yeah, there's that ability. So
Actually, it would be important because it would mean that one side wouldn't end up sweating. It would move moisture around. So it would actually, I would think it would keep the two sheets of plywood that you're putting, it's a double wall system, Leo Sharaskin. I
And
think.
then also on the floor.
Yeah. And so where there's, if you were to put it in something like polyfill and try to do it with, which is not at all as warm, but if you're trying to do that, you'd end up with the moisture all going to the bottom or the side or something. But with wool, it can sort of absorb it and move it around so that nothing gets too wet. If it's completely sealed, okay, it shouldn't happen. But wood is wood and cracks do exist one way or another. So I can imagine that your wood would last longer with wool in between two sheets of plywood than it would last with like the polyester fiber fill stuff.
well, in my experience with at least how I made mine and sealed up, I did with some wood glue.
Yeah.
The coldest spot, whether that's the divider board or one of the corners, still seems to, and typically it's the far divider board. Still, that last frame can get some mold, and you'll have some mold growing on the divider board, which is a little frustrating. I tried on one of them actually to put insulation on the other side of it to see if that it helped a little bit, and I think it did a little bit. I just put like a piece of just foam insulation. So
And burlap again, something that, I mean, you don't have that many wool blankets, right? That you could fold one up and put it on that side. But yeah, mold is always kind of discouraging. And in all the long hives, there's always a little bit of an issue with mold somewhere.
it's Western Washington.
But you can keep it down quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Darius, I think, found the link to the veterinary feed webinar. I think they'll even let you register for, yeah, they didn't update the date on it. And over in chat, Darius is saying that the VFD, Veterinary Feed Directive webinar, which is a lot on European fowl brood, which is why I'm interested in it. They didn't update the year, but go ahead to that link and it should get you in. They would like you to register, but I think you can register the day of or close to it. I think I've done that in the past. Set of webinars too, not just one. Okay. Anything else I'm missing on here? Yeah, anybody from other clubs, we are supposed to be able to sign up at various swarm places. If you've got a swarm line, you might as well give me your number. Gail Buse put in that the WSU, so Washington State University's outreach swarm. And is that the one that WASBA was advertising? I think WASBA.org was advertising something like that too. Okay, Carla and Mike Anderson just joined us. We are waiting for our speaker who knows that he has to work, and I'm going to go check the email right now, make sure that he's not trying to get in and I haven't stalled him somehow. But, and when he knew he couldn't get here till like 7:15. Double checking to make sure that everything looked good. Okay, I don't see him yet. But he did say 7:15 is about as soon as he can get on. But it'll be a great talk. I've been recording up to this point. So if anybody wants to go back and see the announcements, right? Nobody wants to see the announcements. But I did put in a picture of a big leaf maple. A flower, because that's one of the things that I could not believe. That they had flowers. Okay, Annie. Oh, the bee license plates. They said in the newsletter they raised $8,300. Yeah, did anybody spring the big money, the big bucks for that? It doesn't stay, the agreement was that it would not stay in, the money would not stay with WASBA. WASBA.org would pass that money on to research places such as the WSUB labs. Oh, picture of willows. Okay, is it a good picture, Marie, the link you put in? One that shows how this scrubby thing that just grows everywhere that has wet feet. It's like alders. It can grow along the creeks and down the low points and yeah. But what the bush looks like is the part that's really weird. That's if all your life you were raised on a weeping willow. Okay, yeah, well, up close, and it's just this shrubby stuff and those kind of long, narrow leaves. Do they call it lanceolate or something like that? Nobody's admitting to buying the bee license plate, huh? Any updates on the overwintering, how the hives are going, how they're doing? And Mike, our speaker is here. He might need a little time to get settled in. There you are. I see you, Mike. I see your full work page, not the presenter yet. There we go. Presenter mode. You are still muted.
How's that?
Yes, you are
Okay.
good now. Yes, 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 yes. Thank you. Okay. I introduced you by the newsletter, but I don't know if everybody read that. So do you want to especially fill in anything I didn't say in the newsletter? We were talking last night and
Sure. So I'm Mike Kossian. I'm the owner of Kossian Farms. I've been playing a beekeeper since 2009. I came about it kind of by accident. It's a funny story. I'll make it real short. My friend had bees where we had a really big garden, like I don't know, quarter acre at least. And they decided to switch careers. So they were going to move to the south part of the United States and they couldn't take the bees with them. So they went to my in-laws and said, hey, we're going to move. We got to get rid of the bees. And my in-laws said, oh, well, we really want the bees here to pollinate our gardens. So we'll buy them from you and we'll have Mike take care of them. Well, a few weeks later, they came to me and they said, so Mike, we bought so-and-so's bees and we'd like you to take care of them. We've already signed you up for a class. And I said, well, bees sting and that hurts. So I think I'll pass. And they said, oh, well, we already signed you up for the class. So how about you take it anyway? And then the first time that I got to open a bee colony with someone who knew what they were doing, I was just so amazed by it that I stuck to it. So, and here we are, what, 15 or something years later, and it's all I do now, or it feels like it. All right, so how many participants are there in the meeting?
let me see. Let's see.
And can they unmute themselves and ask questions at any time, or?
Yeah,
'Cause
everybody can do that. Yeah,
Okay, good.
I'm trying to think. It
It
looks like
says 17 people.
17.
good.
Okay.
Somebody knows how to read that. I don't even know. Oh, down here. Yes, now I see it at the bottom. It says 17.
So
Okay.
bear with me. I had to work all during COVID. I never learned the Zoom thing. So my day job is pharmacy. So I was passing out everybody's medicine during that time. So I'm still kind of new to this, but I guess we can get started. So I'm going to talk about varietal honey and how I process and collect it. If you can use some of my information, then all the more power to you. But we'll go through this and hopefully have some fun. So this is covering up my notes. Let's see. Maybe I could just put that over there. There we go. Beekeeping includes botany. I think most beekeepers probably started out with a large garden or a garden before they decided that, oh yeah, having a stinging insect sounds like a good idea. That's how I started. I've talked to and taught many classes, and it seems like that people start with a garden, they end up with chickens, and then they're like, well, shoot, we didn't kill the chickens. Let's try bees. Hopefully that tracks with what you guys have been doing. As a beekeeper, it's important to learn when the flowers bloom, which flowers will bloom, and whether they're going to be a pollen source, a nectar source, or no source. Can anybody name a flower that is just worthless in our neck of the woods? Anybody raise their hand? I can't see you, so.
Is anyone
right.
volunteering the awful yellow thing?
All right, it's
Skunk
buttercup.
cabbage. How about
Skunk
that?
cabbage. Oh, I don't know if the bees visit skunk cabbage. I haven't watched that one too close. But buttercup always blooms after maple and the dandelions and just before blackberry. And when you see buttercup, you know that the bees are in a dearth and there's nothing out there for them. So that's one I watch for, and I curse it every time. So it's best to keep a journal and watch when the flowers are blooming. I think the best way to keep a journal, at least for flowers blooming, is to have a graph with multiple years. I don't like to have to flip back into a whole bunch of pages. So I like to have just one thing that I can take a glance at. Things that I like to watch for is when a bloom starts, when a bloom ends, when I start seeing nectar coming into the supers, and when I stop seeing nectar coming into the supers. If you want to get real fancy, you can track temperature during the bloom, and you can track rainfall before and during the bloom. Those are all things that play greatly into whether a bloom or a flow is going to produce for you or not. All right, next slide. Timing's tough to get right, obviously. If you've had bees for more than 1 year, you can see that if you left your supers on for too long and you come back and you're like, we're going to harvest on August 30th, and then on August 1st, you look in your supers and everything looks perfect. It's nice and capped. The boxes are full. And you come back on August 30th because you skipped 2 weeks like a bad beekeeper because you went on vacation or something. And now the box is empty and you're like, where did all this honey go? Well, the bees decided that, well, they didn't want it up there anymore and they moved it away. So timing is critical. With varietal honey, it's even more critical. So timing those blooms and knowing when the supers should be on and when the supers should be off is tough to get right. And then in Washington, at least Western Washington, we have all of these microclimates. So sometimes you'll look at your neighbor's house and they might be a half an acre away from you and their blackberries are all in bloom, but then you're maybe slightly higher or slightly lower and your blackberries aren't in bloom because you're in the shade and maybe a wetter spot. So microclimates are a crazy thing to keep track of. But if you pick the same flowers to watch every year, then, or the same patch, then you can keep a good idea of when to expect the rest of the bloom to start. So there's a couple places that I look at when I'm driving around, and I keep an eye on those when I'm expecting a certain bloom to start, and that helps me keep on target for what I expect. in Western Washington, we're pretty lucky to have several nectar flows. In order of bloom, we see maple, which should start probably in about 3 weeks here. Maple trees are super prolific. They make a nasty tasting honey to about half the population, and the other half of the population thinks it's just delicious. I'll talk about that a little bit more. After maple, we have kind of a wildflower mix with the other spring blooms and dandelion. I've never been able to get a patch of dandelion thick enough that I can harvest just dandelion honey, though. I do see that they sell dandelion seeds at some of the big seed co-ops, but I haven't been willing to turn a whole yard into just dandelions. That would take quite a few acres. I have tried with other plants, though. After the wildflower or spring bloom, we get the blackberry, and then a fireweed wildflower flow, depending on where your hives are located. And then we end this season with knotweed. Some nectars are easier to collect than others, like blackberry. If you're a beekeeper in Washington and you haven't been able to collect blackberry honey, then you probably just didn't realize that that's what your bees were harvesting. Other honeys like maple are extremely hard to get. Where you place your hives plays big into what you'll see. When you're looking for locations, look for large sources of flowers, not just 2 or 3 trees for the maple, not just a half an acre plot for your blackberry. You want to have huge areas. When I tried planting a wildflower patch and buckwheat, I planted 5 acres. And with buckwheat, it's a really cool plant. You can plant it consecutively and get more than 1 crop off of it, supposedly, but you have to plant more than 5 acres because I never saw a drop on the 4 colonies I put on it. So it takes a lot of land and a lot of blossoms for your bee colony to create a harvestable crop. Collecting varietal honey, again, is mostly about timing, when to super, when to remove the ripe honey. Again, my notes are hidden here. There we go. Honey that, oops. There we go. Honey that's not ripe after a bloom is ended can be left on the colonies. I typically combine any frame that's still watery, doesn't pass the shake test, into 1 box or as few boxes as possible. I'll leave those on the colonies, and then I'll move the bees to the next crop that I'm looking to harvest. Those boxes are all marked, and then I save that for wildflower honey. So next slide. All right, we'll talk about some maple trees. Maple typically blooms in April. Am I going too fast for you guys? I feel like I'm talking a million miles an hour.
You want to slow a little bit for some questions?
Sure.
Because you mentioned the shake test, and I'm
Yes.
sure that everybody knows the shake test.
I would hope so. That's
Well,
beginner stuff.
Some of us have, don't harvest a lot. I
Sure.
don't. I have the apiary as my excuse because I'm a teaching apiary.
Oh, that's lucky.
People, yeah, there are people who wouldn't know what you're talking about.
Okay, so shake test. It's real easy. When you have an uncapped frame or a partially uncapped frame, if you take it and you give it a real hard jolt, if the honey rains out like it's raining or like it was water, then it's not ready to harvest. That's going to ferment and it's not going to create a honey that you're going to be able to store. So if you shake it and nothing comes out, then I would recommend checking it depending on how much of it is capped to how much of it is uncapped with a refractometer. A refractometer judges the moisture content inside the honey. If it's below 18.6%, then it's honey and it'll store for you. If it's above 18.6%, then legally it is not honey and it could ferment.
So-
set.
Mike, for the refractometer, can you just take it out of the cell that didn't shake out? Can you just get a little bit and put it on the refractometer?
Sure, yeah. You can
Okay.
use your finger or your hive tool or
Okay.
whatever. It doesn't take much honey for the refractometer. It's
Yeah,
like maybe an ml or 2 mLs. It's really not much. A cell of honey would do just fine.
okay. And then you mentioned the buckwheat, you think you need 5 acres to make a difference.
I tried 5 acres and I never saw a drop. So that was
Anything
really
else you
frustrating.
planted? Anything else you planted that, you know?
Oh, so I did my queen rearing yard in that same yard. So I planted probably 30 different varieties of plants from California poppy to vetch to sunflowers. Sunflowers are really fun and the bees like them. Unfortunately, sunflowers are missing a few amino acids, so it's not a complete diet. You don't want to just allow your bees to visit sunflowers. But I had all sorts of different plants from the ones I mentioned to what else did I put in?
How much? How
It
many
was-
square feet or whatever?
Oh, it was 5 acres. So
Okay, so over the same
yeah,
5
so-
acres, yeah.
so about half of it was the buckwheat and about half of it was the other stuff.
Mhm. Thought I heard a question there. No? And then,
Do we have any first year beekeepers in the group tonight or? Oh,
let's see, at least one, yep, there's 2, I think. Yeah, a couple.
what's the oldest beekeeper, or not the
You're
oldest
it.
by age, but who's been keeping bees the longest?
I think you're it, I
Oh
suspect.
no.
Anybody else longer? I think you are.
So we
I'm
have
not I'm not longer, but I was probably 2 years after you, Mike, taking classes from Jim at Bee's Knees.
Okay, nice.
And actually, people might remember Mike Kossian from, you taught, didn't you? Help with the classes, help assemble equipment. Your face might be really familiar to a lot of people. That was part of why I put your face very, very prominently on the newsletters, because I said people are going to know who Mike is. They saw you at the farmers markets. They've seen you here and there, and of course the pharmacy in Sultan.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. I mean,
I get a few beekeepers out here, but not many.
mhm. So if you
But
recognize
the
Mike,
fair,
that's it.
I see a lot of people at the fair when we're there sharing and talking about bees. That's always fun. All right, well then, is that all the questions for so far and I can move on? Or does anybody
I
have
think that's
anything to
good.
share? Okay. All right, so maple trees typically bloom in April. A lot of people don't even recognize that they have blooms. I've had to teach um, plenty of people that don't have bees that, all right, well, just before the leaves come out, look up there, and if you don't hear a hum, then they might not be blooming yet, but or it might be past the bloom. But look at the catkins hanging down and notice that that's not a leaf coming out. That's the flower. Even though it's green, it's not as pretty as some of the pink flowers or white flowers you see now. But it is a bloom, and it's a major source for our honeybees. One maple tree can encompass more flowers than a blackberry patch. So that each one of those catkins has at least 50, if not 100 different blossoms on it. And then there's thousands of those catkins on a mature maple tree. Over the winter, bee colonies are, they shrink down. So being able to catch a maple honey crop in the early spring without prompting your bees to grow into a harvestable size colony is really tough. That's what maple honey is so hard to get. If you don't have overwintered colonies, there's no chance for you to bring in a maple crop. And even with those overwintered colonies, you have to trick them into brooding up early, and you have to trick them into brooding up large. So feeding pollen and nectar is pretty critical for catching a maple crop. We have a lot of really good pollen sources in the spring, but we'll get months like we have this month. This is March. So far this month, we've had almost 11 inches of rain, where in January and February this year, we had less than half that. So during March, if you're not feeding pollen and you're trying to catch a maple crop, there's going to be very little chance that your bees stored enough pollen from last year to be able to grow a colony into a production size colony early enough for maple. When I first tried maple honey, I thought it was disgusting. I wondered how I could sell it. Maple honey is really unique in that it has an anise flavor to it. I think there's some other hardwood honeys that carry that same kind of flavor. Like there's an oak, I think, back east that does something like that. But it's another early bloomer, so the bees have a hard time getting it. So people finding honey that has that anise flavor is very rare. But there's some people that think it's super delicious, and they'll fight for it or pay top dollar. There's other people that you'll give a sample to, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, what is that? That's disgusting. I don't ever want to taste it again. You're no honey dealer. This is adulterated. And then you have to explain to them where it came from and how it happened. But maple honey is pretty unique that way. And it's a perfect crop to grow your colonies on, to get ready for blackberry. So when maples are blooming, typically I'm not feeding sugar syrup, because there's more than enough nectar coming off of those to keep your colonies going just fine. I don't think they're much of a pollen source though, but we still have alder and let's see, cottonwood should be blooming at the same time too. So you've got those for pollen if the weather's nice. Maple can be tough just due to the weather. Some years we just get rain during the maple harvest or the maple crop, and then you definitely need to be feeding. Maples leaf out just after the bloom is over, so that's another reason why people could think that maple trees don't bloom or don't have a flower. Maple trees are super prolific, and they're pretty much irresistible to your honeybees. Blackberry, or does anybody have any questions on maple or anything I missed?
Mike, do the willows bloom? They bloom about now, don't they? Just before the
The
maple?
willows are pretty early. I
Yeah,
haven't
earlier.
seen any blooming at the moment, but I would expect them before maple.
Yeah,
And
might
then
have
that's a
left
pollen
out.
source more so than a nectar source.
Yeah, okay.
For the big leaf maple honey, do you get a decent crop like every 2 years, every 3 years? Do you have an average or consistency now that you have done this, for 15 years?
I would like to say yes, but no. It's been 3 years since I got a maple crop.
Oh, okay.
So
Wow.
the not last year, but the year before was when the mite explosion really took out some of my colonies from that Apistan or Apivar, or whichever one lost its efficacy. So I had to adjust a bunch of stuff in my apiary to try to get away from that. And I missed 3 blooms, pretty much due to fewer than what I would hope for colonies coming through winter.
What color is the maple honey? Is it a lighter color, darker color, or?
So typically it's really light. Sometimes it's on par with a blackberry with that amber color. There have been years where bees will rob from feral colonies or dead outs, and you'll end up with a really dark honey coming in during that time. You won't be able to harvest that as a varietal honey. That'll be a wildflower, but a lot of times knotweed will get mixed in with it. Even though they're blooming months apart, colonies will rob from other colonies, and you get that dark color.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. There are a couple years where I've been a beekeeper where the maple has been so prolific and the weather was so nice in spring that the entire blackberry crop is adulterated with maple honey. So removing supers at the proper time can make a big difference. Sometimes even when you're not removing supers or you don't have supers on and the bees are storing in the brood chamber nectar that they were able to store or ripen, then you put your supers on for blackberry and the bees are like, well, hey, we still need room for the brood nest. And they move the maple out of their brooding area into your blackberry supers. And you end up with blackberry honey that tastes like anise. And you're like, what happened here? Did they catch somebody's feed or an additive? And if you don't know what maple honey tastes like, you might not understand what it is. But once you've tried maple honey, you can figure that out real quick. We had a fall honey tasting at one of the other clubs, and everybody's blackberry honey tasted like maple honey that year, and they were like, what's going on? This stuff is horrible. But that it's pretty interesting how that works.
Hey, Mike, is the reason why they still have the knotweed in the spring and they can mix it in with blackberry, is it that they really don't like the darker honeys? I was reading some stuff about the darker honeys are less digestible and the bees actually don't prefer them.
I've heard that. I don't think the bees really pay attention to which frame they're gonna steal from or they're gonna use in the winter. It's just, this is close to me, I'm gonna go ahead and use that. I've heard that the darker honeys typically have a higher mineral content, and that is harder for the bees to digest. I don't know how much I buy into that, because on the really good knotweed years, I typically have a better survivability of colonies. So, but I leave really heavy hives. My second deep is packed full of honey. So it's usually a variety of honey from fireweed and knotweed and sometimes blackberry frames. But I don't think that the darker the honey is going to make that big of a difference that the bees are going to try to avoid it.
Thanks.
That's not scientific
No,
result at all. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, you hear these things passed around and you wonder if there's any real backup to it, any substance.
Yeah, every beekeeper has an opinion, and they like to blame either their fails on something else or anecdotally, I guess.
Mhm.
All right, let's talk about blackberry then. Blackberry is the easiest crop to catch in Washington. Blackberry blooms for a relatively short time, 3 to 4 weeks. As a major bloom, blackberry can bloom all summer long, though. There's been quite a few summers where I've gone out after blackberry crop has been harvested and there's really nothing else coming into the colonies, but you'll walk through a blackberry patch and it could be the end of August and there's still a few blooms out there from some plant that got confused or was hiding in the shade too long. But there's not enough really after that first 3 to 4 weeks of bloom for the bees to bring in excess. Blackberry typically blooms in May and June. When I'm ready to super for blackberry, I'm looking for that king bloom. That's the first flower in the group of flowers to bloom on a stem. That king bloom then tells me that I've got about a week before the rest of the flowers start and the nectar flow really starts coming in. So I typically super as soon as I see that king bloom, and then I take my supers off as soon as I start to see the nectar slowing down. So I'll be putting on new supers sometimes once a week on the really strong colonies. And if I put on a super and I come back the next week and it's less than half full, then that tells me that the flow is either slowing or it rained during that period. An annoying thing about the blackberry blossom is it points at the sky with its blossoms wide open. So it doesn't take much of a raindrop to wash out any nectar that could be there. I don't know what volume of rain that would be, but probably less than a quarter of an inch would wash out pretty much the entire crop that you would get for the next day or more if the rain doesn't stop. Rain during blackberry really ticks me off. But move back to my notes here before I go too far down that rabbit hole. All right, so blackberry is our main nectar flow here in Washington. If you don't pull your crop right after the blackberry is done, you'll end up with wildflower honey, but much less will come in depending on your location after the blackberry is done. So I wouldn't super too many more colonies after that if you're not moving to another crop or know of another source in your area. That's pretty much all I've got on blackberry. It's an easy one to get. Blackberry is a great source of pollen too. The bees love that. It's kind of a ugly gray color, but you'll see bees work the nectar and the pollen at the same time with blackberry. A neat thing about honeybees is they train each other on specific flowers. So each brood cycle, you'll end up with the forage bees going out and they'll learn one specific flower, and then they'll just about stick with that flower their entire existence. So they'll train their sisters to go work on that same flower, and then it takes a new cycle of brood before they'll start to think about trying for other crops. Any questions about blackberry honey?
Just the comment that that's the one I really see. Well, it's big, right? The square miles of it, but that's the one I see starts at different times in the different microclimates throughout Western Washington. And then and you're driving along a valley, the southern exposure slopes, of course, are going to bloom first. The ones that were on the northern side, they bloom later. So it ends up being extended. So that's really neat that the bees can go their whole like 3 weeks if they have that of foraging life, and they could just keep even in August trying to pick it up. That's interesting.
So if you can be at a place where there's a substantial elevation difference where you have your hives, that makes an even bigger difference on how long that bloom will last. So if you can be in a place where you have your hives down low and there's a hill behind your house or something that goes up 500 feet or more, then you'll get an extra 2 weeks of bloom off of that. So you'll get the low crop and then you'll get a higher crop. And that really extends how long your bees can train on that same flower and train their sisters on that same flower. And the longer they work that same crop, the more they'll be able to produce. And it even gets greater towards the end because everybody's learned that same flower and knows how to work it. All right, we'll move on. My favorite crop is fireweed. Fireweed blooms a little bit longer than blackberry. Fireweed can bloom from 4 to 5 weeks pretty easily. Typically, when I'm looking for a yard to place my fireweed hives, I look for a clear cut or a fire scar, one that's a couple years old. Fireweed typically blooms the best or is the most productive during year 3 through 6 of a clear cut or a fire scar. Or after year 6, the trees are getting high enough that they're starting to shade, and the fireweed just dies off real quick. You don't see much of a crop off of that anymore. Protecting your colonies from bears is critical when you move your bees to the mountains, though. I don't like bears. We'll talk about that later if we get time at the end. You can rent land from the Forest Service or the Department of Natural Resources. It costs the individual beekeeper, though, the same to rent land for one colony as it would for several hundred colonies. So going that route can be expensive if you're just looking to put one colony on it. Fireweed, it grows and spreads not only by rhizome, its roots, but also by seed. So when you're looking at a clear cut, you might just see a few if it's a first year clear cut. But by the time that clear cut gets to year 3, the fireweed really takes over. You can't quite see it in, does it show my mouse on the presenter screen at all? No. All right. So the center picture there is a clear cut up by Granite Falls. If you go out the Mountain Loop Highway, maybe 3 miles out of Granite Falls, there's a really steep hill that you have to climb to get to the rest of the Mountain Loop. And there's some giant clear cuts in there. If you were to drive up there in July, you'll see fireweed blooming so prolifically that that whole clear cut is just pink. So great places to put your bees is up there by Granite Falls. I don't have any colonies up there yet, but I moved my bees up Highway 2 closer to me. But if anybody is in that area and you're looking for a fireweed crop, that's an awesome resource. Anybody have any questions about fireweed?
Hi, this is Gail. I'm just wondering, what color are you finding the fireweed? What color should it be?
Water white.
Okay.
So I just added the next slide there. You can see that's a brand new frame. So the wax is still really white. That was drawn that year. So there's no discoloration from the wax starting to turn yellow like it would when it ages and the bees add more propolis to it. You can see that's white. Sometimes when the honey gets a little thicker, it'll look with that very light amber color to it. So depending on the size of jar you put it through, a honey or fireweed honey should be very, very light.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
You meant, sorry.
Now go ahead, Marie.
This is Marie. You mentioned that the cost for renting a land was the same whether it was 1 or 100 hives, but how much does that usually range?
So I looked into it when I first started beekeeping as a business. And at that point, it was over $100 for land to rent from the Forest Service for those many colonies. I tried looking into it while I was preparing this presentation, and you have to talk to a Forest Service branch. And the only time I had to prepare my presentation was late at night after I put the kids to bed because they're kind of noisy. So I didn't have a chance to talk to the Forest Service recently on figuring out what the current rate is. But I imagine it's gone up just like everything else, especially with news about honeybees being not as beneficial to local pollinators as we used to think. I don't buy into that at all. And that's another soapbox I could get on and take me down a different rabbit hole. But the Forest Service seems to have bought into that. And I think they've limited the number of colonies that they'll let you rent and put hives on per acre now.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah. What I found is best if you're looking for a fireweed yard is to go knock on doors. I'm pretty lucky. I work at a pharmacy, at the only pharmacy from where I live all the way to Leavenworth. So I know and can see a lot more of the history of people on who I would feel comfortable putting my bees on or on their land. So I got really lucky that way and went and asked people that I could trust. And I've never had anybody turn me down when I've asked, could I put bees on your land? They're always very excited about that. And I tell them that they'll get a couple jars of honey at the end of the season, and they get real excited about that too. So if you go and knock on doors or you have friends that are further in the mountains, those are really easy things to do. And I can't imagine anybody turning you down.
All right. Well, that sounds great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Suzanne in chat wanted to know if that was $100 for, and it's for the season, right? But that's way back.
Yeah,
called
so
like,
that was like
yeah.
2012 or 2013, something like that. So it's quite a while ago.
Yeah, I called like 2020 or something. It was 500, but
Oh, wow.
they were cautioning you that, you need like a half track vehicle or a logging truck or something to get up some of those roads.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
they're behind padlock gates and such. It's not a quick little and then you've got the electric fences too. Yeah, when
yes.
you get time to
Solar
talk
powered
about the
ones.
bears and everything, yeah. You pretty much have to have the solar powered bears. And then there's the hunters that shoot up your hives too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I,
So it's not as easy
typically,
as it
I pull the
sounds.
hives before the hunters get out there. But the talking to some of the commercial guys, especially in California, there's yahoos with 4x4s that like to drive over their beehives too. So even if you've got it stacked, you're double deep and 2 or 3 supers on there, they're like, oh, well, I'll just drive over that. So people are rude. So typically what I do is I go to and knock on people's doors or talk to people that I've met at the pharmacy and find a place where I can keep it behind a gate that somebody else isn't going to be trying to go behind, or near someone's home where they can keep an eye on the bears for me. Fireweed's my favorite crop though. It makes my favorite honey. So I am very diligent about collecting lots of that.
Flavor. What's the flavor of fireweed? Is it
Oh,
supposed to be
fireweed's the
just very
champagne of
delicate?
honey.
What?
You don't even have to be in France to call it champagne of honey.
Okay.
Fireweed's the best. So fireweed doesn't have any aftertaste like some of the other honeys. Maple can really give off a weird aftertaste if you're not expecting it.
Hey,
And
I like maple.
but well, hey, I like it too. It took me a while to learn how to like it though. Um, I think maple honey makes a really neat mead too. But fireweed is just a nice smooth honey. There's really no sharp flavors with it either. It's just sweet. So it's hard to compare it to something.
Okay, but I like knotweed and and maple, so I guess I'm not a champagne person.
All right, shall we move on?
Okay.
All right, wildflower. Wildflower is any combination or any source of honey that you can't identify to just one plant. There's several different definitions of what varietal honey should be. In Washington, it's it's more strict than what uh, the federal level describes as single source honey. At the federal level, they say that it's anything that's predominant to one kind of honey. I've always taken that to be like 10% or less, but they don't really put in a percentage in there. In Washington, they say that it has to be or identified as just one honey. So you have to be really careful in Washington on what you're labeling as varietal honey. So anytime I get a call or a frame of honey that is mixed, I'll separate it out and extract that all together at the end of the season. And then I just have one kind of wildflower rather than a spring wildflower and a fall wildflower and a midsummer wildflower. It's just too many things to keep track of for me. So if I just store it away and extract it together, then I get a consistent kind of wildflower that I like to market as what we have for wildflower, which typically has a little bit of a red color to it because of the knotweed that's in it. So what I do to get my wildflowers anytime I have a frame that's not completely ripe after a crop is I condense it down to as few boxes as I can, and then I'll leave that and mark those boxes. And come the end of the season, I'll have almost as much wildflower honey as what we get for blackberry honey. Wildflower can come in all sorts of colors. You can see here there's blackberry, and you've got the knotweed, what looks like was a brood area that then the bees backfilled with knotweed later. in some of the frames, you get some pretty reds and the dark colors as bees were starting to harvest knotweed and combining it with other things. There's also green honey in Washington. This is always something that fascinates me. This is a plant that comes from Europe. It's a swampy plant. If you check out my Instagram page, a few years ago, I did a post about it and was asking other beekeepers if they knew what it was. And some beekeeper from Europe said, "Oh, that's such and such." And it's got a purple flower. I can't remember the name of the plant right off the top of my head, but it's listed on my Instagram page. That's really interesting to me that I'll have 3 supers of space on top of a double deep colony. And for some reason, the 5 or 10 bees that were working that one plant can always find the same cell. And I'll only have like maybe 5 or 6 cells on 7 different frames that have that green color to them. And it's always like, how did they find that same cell inside the pitch black of the colony and over that many frames and that much area? Bees are fascinating. Does anybody have any questions about wildflower? Lots of sources for wildflower here. None of them are as prolific as the major crops like the blackberry or the fireweed. So there's lots of little things that can come in during a wildflower flow. I don't have them all named, but there's a good variety here. All right, we'll move on to everybody's favorite, black honey. Knotweed. Has anybody been able to harvest knotweed before? Hopefully some yeses. I see one nodding head. I can't see most of you.
Yes.
Perfect. Knotweed, it blooms late. Not many plants are as brave as knotweed to bloom so late in the season and still get pollinators. So kudos to knotweed for being there for us to give the bees something when there's not much else. Knotweed has a pretty white blossom, a very prolific blossom, just like maple trees. There's tons and tons of blossoms on each one of those plant ends. And even though it's got that white blossom, the honey or the nectar that comes out of it is a red color. And then as the bees dehydrate it and bring it down to the proper moisture content, it gets black, and it gets black. Even in a small jar, pure knotweed honey won't allow any light to go through. I always show people when I'm selling at farmers markets that I'll take a flashlight and I'll put it up at the jar. And if the jar glows red, that's wildflower. If the jar does not glow at all and you can't see the light at all, then that's knotweed honey. And there's a lot of beekeepers that see that dark color and don't do a light test on it. And they're like, "Oh man, I got this really good amount of knotweed. This is amazing." But you've got wildflower. So if you don't do the light test and you're not really paying a lot of close attention to the frames as you're harvesting them, you can see maybe 1 frame of knotweed and 5 light frames, and it's all going to come out really, really dark. And as soon as you put a light to it, it's going to show red. So be careful when you're harvesting that, and try to keep those full frames of knotweed separate, and you'll keep a better flavor to it and a stronger flavor to it. Knotweed can be hit or miss. The noxious weed boards are really not enthusiastic about keeping it around. Every time I talk to them, we butt heads, and we agree to disagree on what is a good plant and what's not. I like salmon too. I think fish is delicious, but knotweed is pretty bad for the salmon. It doesn't hold the bank back, and that's why the noxious weed boards are really trying hard to get rid of it. Fortunately, I live in Snohomish County, and our noxious weed board isn't funded as well as the one in King County, where they have a special levy on your property taxes that goes straight to the noxious weed guys. and they can go out there and spend all their money trying to eradicate it. Wait about 3 years and it'll come back, and then you'll get a crop again. Knotweed is a goofy one. It kind of goes in cycles, not just because of the noxious weed guys trying to eradicate it, but about every 3 years, we get a really good crop where the 2 years in between is kind of a medium crop. So off of 60 production colonies, I will expect to get somewhere between 15 and 40 gallons of knotweed a year. Really bad years would be that 16 amount, and it typically rained during it. Really good years are going to be 40 gallons. So not every colony is going to be prolific enough to bring in a knotweed crop, but there are a lot that can still find it. On the really good years, you don't even have to be close to knotweed for your colonies to find it and the bees to bring it back. It's just like the maple, it can be irresistible to bees because there's nothing else really blooming during that time for them to bring in. So if you can keep a good healthy colony, then you'll see knotweed. Mite control is the most critical thing for a knotweed crop. Making sure that those mite populations stay low before the knotweed blooms is really, really important. Keeping the numbers low from July to October, when the knotweed blooms or really ends in October, can be difficult. But if you can overcome that obstacle, then the knotweed is pretty easy to get. Does anybody have any questions on that?
What time of the year are you typically harvesting that then? October or late
Yeah,
September?
I usually pull in October, so that doesn't leave you much time to feed some of your weaker colonies. So a lot of the weaker colonies, I won't super, and they get fed in different yards, so there's no robbing potential from my sugar syrup to the knotweed harvest.
Oh my gosh, you're crazy. You're crazy.
Any other questions about knotweed? Any other questions about our varietal honey in Washington?
So I have one question. For the small beekeeper who would like to get the different varieties and can see the different colors of nectar coming in, pulling off individual frames is probably the best.
Oh yeah.
I wonder if you could do the crush, scrape off the frame and crush if they're like
Well,
plastic frames.
If
And
you're
then,
a small beekeeper, you're not going to
Yeah.
have a 20 frame extractor. You're probably
Yeah.
going to have a little 3 or 5 frame extractor. So even if you only have 3 frames to extract and you've got a 5 frame extractor, just separate them so they're not all next to each other, and that works just fine. I wouldn't do the crush method myself. That wax on the frame is such a big boost to your colonies that I wouldn't give up my nectar crop for the bees to draw more wax. So I guess if you've got new guys that don't have drawn frames, then they won't understand what the difference is. But if you've been a beekeeper for more than a couple years, having a super with drawn frames going on to instead of a super with undrawn comb, you're going to see a vastly different amount of crop to come in. So I get plenty of wax off of cappings with the number of colonies I have. So I'm not looking to get more wax by doing a crush method. But if you're a wax person and you want to make a bunch of dip candles, then crush away. But I make the money off of our colonies by selling honey. So I'm looking to optimize that as much as possible.
I have a slightly different topic. You mentioned, if it's okay with everybody, you mentioned feeding pollen patties, and you and I happened to be talking yesterday, and I was saying that I think the biggest threat to colonies that come, especially from out of state. You bring in newbies because you get, especially you get nukes.
Uh-huh.
And they come in with something that looks like European foul brood, may or may not be, but it's bad for your bees. And the feeding pollen, that is so controversial when you go out on the internet. But in this area, I'm in favor of feed a little bit of pollen patty and see if they take it, especially when it rains like it's raining now.
Yeah. So the bees aren't going to mess with it if they don't need it. They're going to go after real sources of pollen rather than supplemental sources. So when the sun's out and it's nice, I give them a little bit. I give them a lot when I know that there's going to be a week of rain like what we have right now. So it's just a timing thing and watching the weather and knowing how much that they can take. And then watching how much they really use. So right now we have hazelnut in bloom. The alder has started. I see a lot of flowering cherries out there. We have our local native plums. There's lots of sources. Washington is an awesome place for pollen sources, especially in the spring. You can see your colony get pollen bound, or where you see honey bound colonies in the fall. In the spring, you can see, or not during the fall, but during a nectar flow, in the spring, you can see a colony get pollen bound, and they can threaten to swarm if the weather's warm enough. But we just have so many good sources of pollen that you can get away without feeding pollen if you want to. But if you're looking to really optimize your colony and make sure that they get to a point where they're going to harvest a good crop, then I think feeding pollen is a must.
Yeah, and I wonder if everybody's following what you're saying about you've got overwintered strong colonies versus the people who aren't going to get their bees until May.
Yeah, so the people that aren't going to get their bees till May, that's a really late package, and I guess they be getting nukes.
Yeah.
In that case, they've got some stores on the frame that they got, or the frames that they got,
Yeah.
but they don't have a lot, and you still have nurse bees and brood that are needing to be fed. So if the weather isn't going to be right, or a bloom has ended and you don't really know what it is, it's easier to err on the side of feeding pollen and making sure those bees stay healthy than let them come out on a dearth and lose some of that nutrient potential. And then you see blooms of that potential EFB really start and decimate a colony.
Okay, that kind of leads into the package versus nuke controversy. You want to weigh in on that?
So I've done both. I've done a lot of both. I am, when I was a really early beekeeper, I thought nukes were the way to go. That was just amazing. There was no die off of bees. They just started growing and they grew fast. But the more I've kept bees, the more and the number of nukes I've gone through, nukes aren't consistent. They can bring in disease, but even before that, nukes can be completely different from one to the next, even from the same manufacturer, from the same yard. So you can have twice as many bees in one colony as another colony. So it's just it's really difficult for a bee supplier to make sure that those nukes are spot on and the same all the way across. So with a package, it's completely different. That queen's cage, there's going to be no brood. It's going to take you 3 weeks before you start to see growth. You'll actually see loss before you'll see growth with the package, but they're all identical. There's no difference between them. It's all done by weight. And in my opinion, the package is the way to go. You can get it a little bit earlier. By the time the nuke becomes available, the package is caught up and is virtually the same.
So if you could get that some places are offering the packages and the nukes at the same time. And it used to be the packages always came earlier.
Yeah, there's a lot of options. I've seen more and more people getting into selling bees. Um, I, I don't know how qualified some of them are. So a lot of it is resale in Washington. I don't know very many people that can have enough bees that they're selling uh, packages off of their own colonies. I sell package bees. Everything aside, my opinion could be swayed by that, but I've got a lot of experience with other packages and sources and nukes, and the more I look at it, I'm not as fan of a nuke as I once was.
Is it partly because the nukes nowadays seem to be assembled? They're just going into they're going into the apiary with the nuke boxes and just grabbing a brood frame out of this one and a storage frame out of this one and sticking the queen in there in a cage. Is that the problem? Because I'm wondering if that's the quality is very variable. I've noticed the same
Yeah.
thing.
So they're shaking bees from other colonies onto frames, and if they're not locking them in there and moving that box to a different yard right away, then most of the bees that they shook, if they were forage bees, they're going to go back home to where they came from. So building nukes in your own yard for splitting and growing your apiary is really easy. Doing that same method, I typically move mine to a different yard that same day or right after I prepare them. But there's not many people that are selling overwintered nukes. They're almost all prepared. So that's where that difference comes in. They might go into a yard and create 100 nukes that day, but by the time you get to the last box from the first box, there's bees flying again, and they're redistributing. And if you have a box that maybe you didn't put the queen in right away, or maybe the queen isn't as smelly as she should be, and she's not getting very many attendants to come and join her, then it's going to be lighter than the rest. So I'm a big proponent for packages over nukes. As a first year beekeeper, or my first like 3 or 4 years, I went towards nukes more and was really excited about that. And I've had nukes from 4 different suppliers, and I see the same problems with each. So it's tough to do nukes, and it's tough to do nukes right, especially at volume.
Thanks.
What's the process that you use to make packages? I'm just curious. I haven't heard of someone up this far north making packages.
Yeah, I don't make my own packages. I actually use
okay.
bees from California source.
Okay.
When my bees are ready for maple honey, I'm not about to break them down and pass them off to somebody else.
Right. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I hope we're not exhausting you. Your mouth must be getting dry by now.
Oh, no. I could talk bees all day.
This is true beekeepers. They could talk. We could stay here all day. Darius has a question. When do you start feeding pollen patties in the spring?
So usually in February, we get a nice week. If I can get into the colonies enough and see what's going on, I'll probably start feeding towards the end of February or the beginning of March is what I try to do to get the bees to brood up early enough for maple. So it's a timing thing though. So you got to really understand where the bees are at and how much brood that they could handle. So I wouldn't feed a ton of pollen at first. I would start them with a small amount and then watch what happens with the brood nest when you get days that are warm enough that you can break in and actually see the brood nest. So it's going to take some trial and error on every beekeeper's part to really understand where it fits best for them. But for me, it's that end of February, beginning of March time.
I leave the paper on mine so I can see the little bits of paper on the slide out board. If they're actually eating it, just the paper comes down. If it's in their way and they're throwing it out in house cleaning, then I see pollen patty coming down. I go, okay, they didn't want it. It was in their way. They threw it
It's
out.
less expensive to buy bulk pollen than it is to buy the pre-made patties. So I get a 40-pound box from Man Lake, and I have 8 of them right now in my garage that I'll be working off of. When I went out and started feeding pollen a couple weeks, let's see, 3 weeks ago now, I went through a whole 40-pound box feeding my colonies.
And you're just spatulaing it on, kind of.
I use the hive tool. I cut it
Yeah.
into chunks, and then I put it right on top of the brood nest. It's kind of
If I
like
put-
Play-Doh. It's fun.
If I put it too close to walls, I've noticed that it tends to get a little moldy if it sits there for very long. So
Yeah, it'll
put it
play
toward
with the
the center.
moisture too. You want
Yeah.
to keep it right above the colony where it can stay dry. It's even better when the bees are in 2 deeps. Much easier to keep it dry then.
Yes, that heat retention, that, I don't know, day-night cooling, they can control the ventilation better.
A lot of bees stay awake all night. So I have some more slides if you guys want to keep going, or we can stop. And that was pretty much all I had on just varietal honey. The rest of my stuff is how to prepare your bees for it.
I think everybody's staying, I'm guessing,
Right.
but it looks
Oh.
like we talked bees all night too. And then we're recording, which you didn't mind, right, Mike? I didn't have a chance to ask you in advance, but
That's
then
fine.
people can
I
come
think my
back.
hair is okay.
Your makeup artist, yeah, right.
Yeah.
But if anybody has to leave, yeah, Mike Anderson is saying, please continue. I think if you continue and anybody has to drop off to feed the cats, put the husband out, whatever they need to do, then they can come back and watch the recording later. So I'd love it if you kept going.
All right. So overwintered colonies. Anytime you're looking for making a honey crop, that's what you look for. Overwintered colonies are going to outproduce your packages or nukes pretty easily. When I'm looking for a colony that is going to be a production colony, I want to have 10 frames of brood, double-sided, full frames of brood. You don't always see that, so you can add frames that are partials, but as long as you get to that 10 frames of brood, then you're going to have a good production colony. Overwintered colonies. So to collect multiple crops, really, you need those really big colonies. Here's a frame of brood. This is what you want to see. This is about blackberry time is when I'm pulling this frame, getting pictures of it. Healthy brood looks like this. Unhealthy brood, you're going to see a shotgun pattern. You want to watch out for that. There's several diseases that can affect the brood. European foul brood is one we've talked about. There's American foul brood that's far worse. Those colonies, you're going to have to burn and get rid of everything. But when you're looking at your brood, you're going to look at this pattern. If you don't see solid brood patterns, then you need to start looking at the larvas. And when you're looking at the larvas, you're looking for discoloration. And if you start seeing that, then you need to start looking at the food that the bees have. So if you're looking around the outside edges of the brood nest, there's usually a rainbow. I like to call it a rainbow because there's going to be multiple colors of pollen in there. A variety of sources is important because bees self-medicate. They don't just use pollen, but they use other things in their environment to try to cure things. But if you're seeing a good rainbow of pollen and a lot of it, then you're usually going to see a really healthy brood nest and you're not going to have any problems with a shotgun pattern. If you're starting to see a shotgun pattern and you're looking and you don't see any healthy pollen sources or large amounts of pollen sources, then you need to quickly start feeding pollen because that'll make all the difference for your colony of brood, and it can bounce them out of a negative situation. Feeding pollen in the spring is essential, especially when we have these raining weeks. I've already talked about that a couple times. If you want a large brood nest or to be able to split your colony, then feeding that pollen early, but not too early. That's a thing that you'll learn just as trial and error goes through. But feeding pollen in the spring is essential. When you see those 10 frames of good healthy brood in there and no backfilling, then you've supered properly and your colony is going to make you boatloads of honey. I haven't talked about it, but with my colonies, I like to try to get at least a super per crop. Sometimes I get really lucky and I can get 2 or 3 supers on some crops, but that typically means I'll get less on either the crop that came before or the crop that will come after. So the bees can really work themselves too hard on some things. This is a frame that I had brought to the fair a couple years ago. That frame had over a gallon of honey on it. If you get really good, strong crops of honey, you can spread your frames apart a little bit and then come back a few days later and do it again and again. And you can get the frames to be just plump with honey. I like to do that because every time I put frames in my extractor, I only have a 20 frame extractor for the number of colonies I run, which is far too small according to most of the people I speak with. So I make it work though, and it fits in the space I have. But the fewer frames I have to extract, but the thicker the frames are, makes it so I'm not out there for weeks on end harvesting honey. Some locations produce better than others. And a great way to find out about that is to scout where you're hoping to put your bees a year in advance. Sometimes you don't have that opportunity. Sometimes you can just throw them out in some place and keep scouting for the next year. But looking a year in advance and finding out what's in the area and how long that bloom time will last is where your notes come in, and where bee clubs become incredibly important. Really learning bloom times is pretty hard to do when you're a first year beekeeper and you're not knowing exactly what to watch out for. Even later beekeepers sometimes have trouble with that. Actually, a funny story, I had a person come purchase honey from me earlier this week, and I was pulling out my varietal honey, and I said, well, I've got blackberry and I've got fireweed and I've got wildflower. And he says, well, no, I want pure honey. I don't want flavored honey. I said, well, this is pure honey. It comes from the blackberry blossoms. Well, no, I don't want the blossom honey. I want the honey that the bees make. I had to explain to him that honey comes from nectar from flowers, and then the bees make the honey off of that nectar. And it took me about 15 minutes before I finally came or got through to him. But it's funny the education that you have to go through with either people purchasing honey or just beekeepers not being quite aware yet. The larger source or larger amount of blossoms that you can find in a yard is going to be better for your colonies. Blackberry is super easy to get because it's everywhere and it's hard to get away from, and it's just grows and grows and grows and has lots and lots of flowers on it. Things like knotweed, you need to look for yards sometimes, and sometimes those yards are hard to get to. But if you can find a place that's got lots and lots of places with knotweed, like floodplains and dikes, I really like dikes because they don't wash away so often. And that knotweed grows its roots so darn deep that it'll come back year after year after year. And that makes great places for that. I talked about fireweed earlier on where to look for that. If you can move your colonies from one yard to another, you can really increase your chances on collecting a variety of honey. Sometimes I've got a couple yards that I covet that I can get blackberry, maple, fireweed, and knotweed off of. I will not be sharing those locations, but there are places that you can do that. There's also great wildflower producing yards that you can find, but really scouting and finding when those blooms are and how long they last in different locations is important. Here's another picture of that frame from a little bit further up. Here's a video. This one's kind of fun. I think it'll play. Yeah. So this is during the blackberry flow. Sort of been 3 years ago. You can see some of the colonies are larger than others from that front picture there. See if it, I think I looked up at the sky too long. But this is the peak of blackberry flow. So if you watch carefully, there's not a lot of pollen coming in, but see how the bee's abdomen is down low? Those, they're carrying a load. So their honey crop is full. And if you watch them carefully, when your bees are coming in and doing the same thing, you'll watch them and they'll be kind of looking like it's their first day flying and they're having a hard time landing. When their honey crop is full, they're so much more heavy than they would be normally. So they have a much harder time being real accurate with their landing spots. So it can be kind of funny. Sometimes there's setbacks. Some setbacks are easier to accept than others. I've broke 3 hive tools like that in my time keeping bees. It's always good to have extra equipment, not just supers and deeps and places to put bees, but your smoker. I always have a backup smoker. I don't bring it to me or with me to every yard, but I've destroyed smokers before. I might have run over one accidentally, but it's good to make sure you have another one available. Hive tools especially. My hive tools are notorious for walking away. So when I go out to the bee yard, I have a galvanized bucket with my smoker and all the tools that I'm possibly going to need. I keep at least 5 hive tools in that bucket at all times, because either I'll be breaking into too many heavy boxes and I'll snap one of those things in half, or I'll set one down on top of a colony and walk over and start looking at another colony, and it'll camouflage in with the wax I just scraped off, or I put it at an angle and it just doesn't shine back to me. So extra equipment is important. I hope every beekeeper has at least 1 extra box, because you never know when you're going to have to split your colony or you're going to get the opportunity to catch a swarm. So this year I'm adding 20 colonies to my operation, but I bought enough equipment for 30 colonies because sometimes I get a lot of swarm calls. Sometimes I need to split a few colonies, but I always have enough equipment that I'm not going to go and have to run and buy somebody else's stuff or need to try to catch up real quick, because that just drives me nuts. I like to be prepared. Does anybody have any questions on any of the last few slides? So that hive tool is the red one from Man Lake. I've stopped purchasing those. I've broke too many. They work great if you don't have a lot of work to do with it on the same day and flex it too much. I've switched to the yellow really expensive tool that Daydant has. It's far sharper, and I have not broken one yet, and they come in 3 different sizes. So I like the short size for when I'm working with supers. I like the longer size for when I'm working with the deeps, because it's a lot easier to break those really well welded together with propolis boxes with a bit longer leverage. So if you're looking for a hive tool, I definitely recommend Daydant, and looking for the one that costs about 20 bucks. So it's way worth it. Any other questions? Or please?
Okay, Mike, you
Yeah.
must you must put your own boxes together. You must have them super well constructed.
Yeah, mine are all
Okay.
screwed together at the corners.
Yeah.
So at the bottom and the top of every box on both sides, I put a 2-inch screw, and then the rest is nails. And then I glue the seam as well.
And then the frames, because if you're busting hive tools without destroying
Yeah.
your wood. Because a lot of beginners are going to do like I did, and I'll take any equipment we get donated to
Uh-huh.
the club. But if it's got the cheap staples in it and such,
Yeah.
you apply any amount of force, we have to
when-
cut through propolis and such. If we applied any amount of force, it would just come apart.
Yeah. So when I first started beekeeping, I looked at how many frames it took to fill a box and how many staples it took to build a frame. And I thought, well, shoot, that's going to take me a long time. So I went with the one-piece plastic frames. And in the brood chamber, I do augment it with wooden frames on frame 1 and frame 10 in my boxes, because the wooden frames I can pry against a lot harder than the plastic frames. But the rest of my frames are plastic, and I get them from Acorn Bee Supply. And I found that not all plastic frames are the same. I found that Acorn makes a much higher quality plastic frame that I won't chip and break pieces off of. I'm not a fan of the plastic frames from Man Lake. I don't deal with them at all. My like 3rd year beekeeping, I bought enough for 3 bee colonies from them, and they're far weaker than the ones you'll get from Acorn Bee. When you say that you like to accept whatever frames and whatever equipment you can find, I don't recommend that either. With a larger extractor, every frame weighs a different amount. If you can stick with the same manufacturer, even from plastic foundation with wood, you want to stick with the same manufacturer of that plastic foundation and the same manufacturer of the wood frame, because just a little bit weight difference will throw your extractor off and you won't be able to balance it right. And you'll frustrate yourself like you wouldn't believe trying to get it done in a timely manner. So I separate all of my stuff by manufacturer, because when I was a young beekeeper, I didn't pay a lot of attention to that. And I've got a few frames from other places, and all of those are in the same box or together in multiple boxes. So when I'm extracting, I can put all of them together in the same load, and it makes a huge difference. So you might not know what you want to use being a 1st or 2nd or 3rd year beekeeper, but know that once you do figure it out, stick with the same one. Don't continue to buy different ones, and it'll make your life a lot easier come extraction time.
That's really good advice. I've never heard it explained.
Yeah, I learned that the hard way for too many years. I figured it was just part of one frame was heavier than the other, and I just couldn't balance it. But even with my extractor, I have a Lyson extractor, and it has a timer on it. So I like to be able to walk away from it and let my children just watch the outflow. And if it starts bouncing too much, then I can't walk away from it. I have to stay there and baby it. And I'll even rearrange the frames to try to get it to balance better. But if you stick with the same size frames or the same branded frames, then it's so much easier to get it to balance and keep it balanced. I can walk away from mine most of the time and it won't even wiggle.
Thanks.
Yeah. So if you're working with a really small extractor, like a 5 or 6 frame, then it's easier to match things. But mine's a 20 frame, and they get a lot bigger than that. And you really want to be careful about matching things then. That's my end slide for the presentation. I have a couple slides and videos of bears if you guys want to join me in hating bears. But you don't have to watch them. Some of them are scary.
There's one question about goldenrod. And then do you ever collect pollen? But I don't think pollen pays very much money.
So it's my experience with pollen that either you collect a pollen crop or you collect a honey crop. You don't do both. So when you start collecting pollen, you're going to cut the feed for your bees. So they're not going to be able to grow as big of a brood nest. You're not going to get as big of a colony. Pollen sells for a pretty good amount, but it doesn't store forever, and it's harder to store because you got to stick it in the freezer. So I don't collect pollen. I just do honey. It's too much work to do both.
Even in like the July, late July, August earth, even then it
Um,
would be worth it.
Yeah, we still get so much rain. It doesn't take a lot of rain to get
Oh.
that pollen wet, and then it molds really easy. So it's so much more work to do pollen than it is to do honey that
Yeah.
I've dabbled with it, but I just turned myself away from it because it's I don't have a lot of free time. I have a full-time job besides my playing with bees and having 3 children that are still pretty young. So I
Mhm.
I try to put my time where it can be most effective.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would only do it with the plastic ones that go on and off the front of the hive anyway. That
Yeah,
idea
those
of
are easier to
stacking,
remove rather than an entire bottom board.
I can't understand why anyone would even do that. I mean, that's a lot of work to stack and unstack. Yeah,
I imagine they're using single deeps and they're just packing them full of brood.
okay. Maybe. And goldenrod, have you really, I saw goldenrod for the first time a couple of years ago. Does goldenrod really even exist in this area?
Yeah, I think it likes the ditches along the road, but
Yeah, that's where I saw it.
yeah, we don't get a lot of it, so it'll come in your wildflower crop. It's not going to be substantial enough that you're going to get a single harvest off of it.
Okay, you want to show us about bears?
Sure.
I think we caught up in everything else.
All right, so this is a yard that I've pretty well abandoned now. If I play the video, you'll see my friend there, Yogi.
Oh.
So those aren't light boxes. They're all strapped together on one pallet. The light that you saw just turn on, that's me in my truck. I was sleeping in the bee yard that night because Yogi has been trouble for me. I think bears make really good sausage and rugs. Other than that, I think they're worthless. So the rules for removing a bear are really strict. So I just try to chase them away, and then if they've been too much of a problem, then I end up abandoning yards and moving on. But I find them very annoying. Here's another one. This is the same yard. That's not a very big bear like the last bear. This one's like a yearling. And here is, you can see the bees on the front of that colony on the far right that didn't get removed. They're not very happy. But there that bear is yanking frames and chewing that box up. All of my hives, oh, actually, usually my hives are all strapped. The two on the left here aren't strapped. The one that she removed was strapped, but she tore through the bottom board and just destroyed it and was able to get the strap off. I've had bears take colonies and move them more than 100 feet from where they were, even double deeps. So they're incredibly strong, and keeping them from getting to the honey or the brood really is what the bears are after. They'll eat honey and they think it's delicious, but they really like that pollen or protein source that they get from the brood. They lick the brood frames completely off. There's nothing left on those frames. Sometimes even the wax that's in the inset on the bottom of the frame is gone. They just clear off completely. So if you can keep a bear from being rewarded and keeping off of the colonies with an electric fence, then you'll be far happier than if you let them reward themselves once, and then it doesn't matter how much your electric fence voltage is. They go through it to get rewarded again. I hate bears. So that was my last slide. Happy to keep talking if you guys have questions, but I don't have any more prepared.
I think we should give you a round of applause here. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
No
Because
problem.
I know people have really enjoyed this. I mean, I have. Yeah. Wow, that's a lot of information. It's really, thanks for sharing it. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, especially after a full day's work, you know, and yeah.
Well, I didn't have any rude customers today. Everybody was happy. Nobody was sick. So
That's kind of hard if you're working in a pharmacy.
yeah, it's difficult, especially this time of year.
Hmm. Okay. Somebody says they have bear rugs.
Yeah.
I'm not
That's
quite
my
sure
favorite
what that
Thanksgiving.
means. Um, yeah, I've heard incredible stories of trying to get rid of bears. Yeah. And then once they learn that they can crash through the electric, once they're motivated to crash through the electric wires.
But even if they don't crash through it, they'll dig under it, they'll climb
Mhm.
around it, they'll do everything they can to get to it. I follow a lot of different beekeepers on social media from around the world, and come early spring or mid spring actually, around the maple flow, bears start to get active and they're looking for things to eat. And then the next time that I really see trouble with bears is later in the fall. I haven't had any trouble with them when I've moved to the mountains, but I always have a very strong electric fence around my colonies when I'm up in the mountains. A lot of the colonies down here, I don't often put fences around because they're in people's yards that I trust and pretty close to houses. So typically the bears aren't an issue, but this yard is, if anybody knows where the roundabout is here in Sultan by McDonald's, is just up the street from that on 339th.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty close to a lot of people, but there's about 3 bears in that area that have come through and given me trouble. So that yard I've just had to get rid of. But there's other beekeepers that are on that road, and I don't know how they've kept away from the bear. It must not be interested in that area, or maybe their hives aren't smelling as delicious as mine did. But yeah, so electric fence.
Wow. Well, I'm gonna
Mike, have you ever thought of about putting them up on a platform?
I've seen that. If I had land enough, I would probably use like a one of those trailers you see on the trains, and figure out a way to have stairs that lifted and lowered so the bear couldn't get up. But those would be great ways. I know in one of the bee programs put out by WASBA, there's a picture of a platform in Eastern Washington. And I've talked to the guy that built that, and he got all that material for free. So it was cheap, but it still took a lot of time to build. And I can't imagine moving supers up and down that way. So it's been something that I've written off personally. I find it easier to move the colonies to a different yard.
An idea that I've thought of is buying like one of those cattle transporting trailers that have the steel sides with the holes all through for airing, and seeing if you could put hives in one of those, and if that metal would be strong enough to keep a bear at bay. But I also don't know then if it would heat up too much and overeat the hives because it's a metal box with a bunch of holes in it. I don't know.
Yeah. There would be some breathing in there, but depending on how many colonies you put it in, I'd be more worried about those colonies just warming up themselves in that area that was slightly enclosed. But
Right.
That's a good idea. I've seen beekeepers in British Columbia use those dog kennels. So the chain link fence, and then they'll put a foot off of the chain link fence electric wire, and on top of the chain link fence more electric wire, with grounding wires in between, because once the bear's off the ground, it's not going to ground anymore. So you have to have a hot wire and a ground wire together to be able to shock them, and still that doesn't work. So cows probably kick a lot harder than a bear, but bears use those forepaws, and you would be amazed the amount of power that they have in those forepaws. I would think that a cattle truck would even get ripped to shreds if a
Yeah,
bear was
I suppose
motivated
that's-
enough.
Yeah, that's probably really, really true.
Wow. It's an interesting idea, though, I admit. Okay, I think I'll go ahead and stop the recording.